There's a very uncomfortable truth as it pertains to our government, something that I learned way back during President Trump's first term. It's something that's probably been around and very valid and alive in American politics for decades, maybe longer. Maybe it's been there all the time, and we never knew. But I would argue it's most likely, at least the modern iteration of it, has been around for the last, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 decades. That's a safe estimate. And that unfortunate truth is that most of the what you would want to call popular common sense style legislation, the things that the people really truly legitimately want, when those don't get passed, it's because the swamp, you can call it the uniparty swamp, you can call it a combination of the deep state as well as the establishment, both the Republican and Democrat establishment in D.C. You could even point to the globalist elite cabal saying, you know what, we don't want that done, so we're going to just ever so slightly derail it, because that's all it takes, unfortunately. That's all it takes in American politics, especially as it pertains to Washington, D.C., and most particularly as it pertains to Capitol Hill, that the legislation that we want, that they don't want, they find a way to stop it 100% of the time. And they do it through manipulation. This isn't about, we just got so close. So close. Anyway, the first time I learned about it was when John McCain miraculously came around to derail the repeal of Obamacare, or the adjustment, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't a full repeal, but you get the idea. Up until that point, while Barack Obama was in office, the Republicans were able to pass bill after bill after bill, get it, send it over to Obama's desk so that he could veto it. Okay, yeah, we're going to repeal Obamacare. We did it, guys. They send it over there. Obama, of course, vetoes it, and then, I guess we're just going to have to try harder and win more elections and do more fundraising and get more embedded into office, because by golly, we can't do it while Barack Obama's there unless we get a majority. We need more funds. We need more funds. And oh, please, American people, you stupid people, please support us. So if you recall, once after passing, 53 versions of Obamacare repeal, they finally got a president in there that would actually sign it. And it's like, oh my gosh, he's not going to veto it, so I guess we got to figure out a way to not pass an Obamacare repeal. And they had one. They had worked it out. It was going to work. It was going to pass. It was going to be miraculous. It was going to be amazing. It was actually going to be even milquetoast. It wasn't a great repeal. But, of course, they drew their straws, or in this case, they probably already had a volunteer. They knew that McCain was on his way out. He wasn't going to run for re-election. Of course, he would end up dying shortly thereafter. He was in poor health. They knew, okay, so who's going to be our scapegoat? And John McCain, at the last moment, once it looked like, oh my gosh, we could actually pass an Obamacare repeal, put it on President Trump's desk, get it signed, and be done with it. Well, that's not what they really wanted. That's not what the establishment, the uniparty swamp, they never wanted it repealed. And so John McCain did the thing, did the deed, and got it reversed. I say it's almost always in Capitol Hill. We also saw that in the Supreme Court. We've seen it multiple times in the Supreme Court. I'm not going to muddy the waters by talking about John Roberts. Let's just stick with Capitol Hill for now, because that's a whole other can of worms. Fast forward to today, and we have really three pieces of legislation. One piece of legislation, one budget issue, right, that are exceedingly popular with the American people. Of course, we have the desire to fund DHS. Okay, the Democrats are sitting on probably the least popular partial government shutdown of all time. People don't want to wait in line for 6 hours just to get on a plane. People don't want DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, to be curtailed, to be trying to stop terrorism while we're in the middle of a war with Iran. They don't want them to have their hands tied behind their backs by Democrats. But nobody seems to care. Okay, this isn't getting talked about. in the news other than, oh, get to the airport 8 hours early. That's all that the news is saying about it. Republicans aren't really pushing too hard against it. And Democrats are just like, yeah, no, we want ICE to be disbanded, basically, or neutered to the point to where they're completely ineffective. That's really what their demand is. They want ICE. The biggest and most important demand would be to dump the administrative warrants and go to judicial warrants, which would basically make it to where we'd have the opportunity to deport like 3 people per day. So it would slow it down to an absolute trickle. And they know that, and that's what they want. They don't want people deported. They want Democrats, just keep this in mind. Democrats, for their agenda to work, they need illegal alien murderers, rapists, kidnappers, armed robbers, or just illegal aliens in general to remain on the street. They don't want them deported. And so they're willing to screw over the United States of America as many times as possible, and in this case, it's through DHS. So that's a popular demand that the American people, if you ask them, nobody's asking them, but if you were to ask them, it would be probably 85%. Okay, maybe even higher. That because it's like you tell them the facts. Okay, so ICE is not being affected whatsoever by this government shutdown. The Democrats are wanting ICE to be neutered, and they're going to hold you hostage, your airports hostage, the Coast Guard hostage, FEMA hostage. They're going to hold it all hostage, and thereby hold many tens of millions of American people hostage, so that they can virtue signal. I don't even know what they're trying to accomplish. And if you were to ask people, do we want the government shutdown to end? Do you want to pay TSA agents and people like that for doing their job? Or do you want them to just continue to quit en masse and make the lines longer for an extended period of time? Of course, people are going to vote against that, or would survey. They don't get a vote. They're going to survey against that. The second big one, of course, is the Save America Act. With the Save America Act, you're looking at voter registration with ID required. You're looking at ID required to vote. These are things that are only increasing in popularity. It's funny that as a result of Democrats, rhinos, the uniparty swamp trying to stop this from happening, they're actually pushing more and more support towards the idea of voter ID. It should be 95%. There's going to be 5% who will openly admit, oh yeah, no, I totally want elections to be rigged. We don't need free and fair elections. Or, there's going to be a percentage there. No, totally. Like, you guys are stupid if you think that black people have the ability to get IDs. Are you dumb? Of course they need to be protected. They can't get IDs. There are those idiots out there that would say and truly believe such things. But 95% of Americans, I believe, would not, and they would be okay with voter ID, considering that it is sort of like the whole, 20th century, let alone 21st century, standard operating procedure in countries, including even third world countries. They believe in it. They every other country pretty much does. We're the only ones that are like, oh no, it'll be totally racist. Jim Crow 2.0. All of that's a lie, of course. It's a lie. And in this case, in this scenario, it's not just the Democrats that are opposed to it. It is the Republicans as well. Not all of them. Obviously, there are many Republicans that are on Capitol Hill that are fully behind this. There are a lot of Republicans that are mostly behind it. They'll vote for it. They wouldn't risk opposing it, but they don't really care one way or the other. And then there are some Republicans who are vehemently opposed to it because, let's face it, they're recipients of it as well. Okay, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins. These are people that don't want voter ID because that will hurt them. Obviously, I think it's crystal clear. And if you don't believe this, then you're listening to the wrong podcast. But I think it's crystal clear that Democrats do get the lion's share of benefits from voter fraud, from not having voter ID. This is why they're opposed to it. It's not because they actually truly legitimately believe that voter ID is Jim Crow 2.0. They don't think that. They're not stupid. Because here's the thing: if you think that, whether you're Chuck Schumer or whoever, if you think that requiring voter ID is Jim Crow 2.0, and if that is your legitimate thought process, then you are insanely stupid. You should be wearing a helmet. You should not be in Congress. Okay, and any of those supporters who are sitting there listening to Chuck Schumer or any of the other Democrats, Hakeem Jeffries, and thinking, oh yeah, no, it's totally racist. It's totally Jim Crow 2.0. This is totally going to destroy the system and make it to where those poor minorities will just be, oh my gosh, it's so bad. If you're one of those people, then yes, you too are brain dead. You're retarded. You're stupid. And you shouldn't be voting, okay? You probably deserve a vote less than a non-American, So, but hey, you have the right. There's no intelligence factor when it comes to the ability to vote. It just comes down to, are you an American citizen over the age of 18 or not? If you're a legal resident, you can vote. Great. And I'm not talking about felonies, incarcerations, yada yada yada, mitigating circumstance. I'm talking about your average American who's just whatever. So why can't it get passed? If it is over 70%, we know that. Some people are saying it's 80%, some people are saying it's over 80% popularity. If that's the case, why can't we get it passed? A lot of people have been asking that question. Elon Musk chimed in and said, if having control of the House, the White House, and the Senate tells us, and having 80% of Americans backing a bill, and we still can't get it passed, then there's something fundamentally wrong with the system. And I would argue that is mostly right, but it's not the system of government itself that's the problem. It's the uniparty swamp. It's the deep state. It's the system behind the system. It's the people that called John McCain and said, "Hey, I need you to vote. If you wait until the very end, and if it's sitting there at 49 to 50, or sorry, it would be 49 to 50 in favor of repealing Obamacare. If you would be the deciding vote, then you need to vote against it, and we'll give you a reason why. Okay, you're our ace in the hole." Those are the people. That's the portion of the system that's actually broken. Is the filibuster broken? No. You know why? Because if it wasn't for the shadow system, the system behind the system, that's stopping this, that's preventing all this from happening, then there would be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15 maybe Democrats and 100% of the Republicans who would be in favor of the Save America Act. Because they too, again, they're not stupid. They see that with 80% support, and considering that it's common sense, sure, let's go ahead and do it. But they don't. They don't actually think along those lines anymore. They're not allowed to. They have to vote against the truth. They have to vote against the will of the people. They have to vote against the Constitution. Because don't forget, you already have to be an American citizen to vote in elections. It's already codified. All this does is enforce that particular law, or allow for enforcement. The Congress doesn't enforce anything, but it does allow for enforcement of that law, that concept, that common sense idea that the American people support. Therefore, it's not the filibuster system that's broken. It's the system behind the system that's breaking it. Which is why, despite the fact that I am and have always been a adamant supporter of the filibuster, not because it's in the Constitution, because it's not. People say, "Oh, you have to change the amendment." No, it's a chamber rule. That's it. That's it. I mean, it's tradition. They could change it if they wanted to. They could change it with a majority vote. But they can't get a majority vote, or at least John Thune can't. And it's not because he truly, legitimately could not. It's because he doesn't want to. John Thune will publicly say that he's fighting for the Save America Act. But whether because his puppet masters have said no, or because deep down he too is in, of the same, a younger version of Mitch McConnell, which I think is very possible. Both of them, those possibilities are legitimate and realistic to contemplate. Or whether he's, bought off, bribed, bullied, whatever. For whatever reason, he doesn't want this to work. And unfortunately, he has reality on his side, because a talking filibuster would pose massive challenges. He would have to get rid of the filibuster altogether. And he doesn't think that Murkowski or Collins or Paul or Tom Tillis or Mitch McConnell would allow that to happen. And none of the Democrats would, not even Fetterman. So, I don't have the votes to end the filibuster. I don't have the votes or the manpower, and I'm not even going to talk about that. Glenn Beck did a great explainer as to why. He says this is why they won't do a talking filibuster. It's one of the reasons. One of the reasons is because they Thune currently truly legitimately doesn't have the votes. But even if he did have the votes, as Glenn Beck points out, it would require a crap ton of work on the part of the Republicans. I mean, they would have to get into a schedule. They would not be able to leave D.C., not for extended periods of time. They couldn't go visit their home states. They couldn't leave the chamber very often. It's not something that's, this is going to, be 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. No, it's 24/7. Once you start talking, this is actual work, okay? Forget about the country club, forget about the golf course or the fancy dinners or anything like that. They'd actually have to roll up their sleeves, drink some Red Bull and get to work for a long time, for weeks, maybe months. And they don't want to do that. John Thune doesn't want to do that. When he says, we can't get the consensus, we can't get we don't have the votes. He's not really talking about votes in this case. When he says, but he does make this statement, we can't get the votes to pass it, nor the votes to maintain it. When he says maintain it, what he's talking about is having the people in the chamber to prevent nasty amendments from being inserted into the bill. Okay, Democrats will throw up dozens, hundreds of amendments. Okay, and there has to be enough Republicans there at every time to be able to stop it from happening. It would be a crap ton of work to use the talking filibuster, which is why I say that the only possible solution is to take all of the naysayers. First, say, look, we can't do this, we can't do that. The only way we can get the government open, make sure you do both, okay? This isn't just about the Save America Act. It's about the only way we'll get that and everything else that we need done, including getting the government open, and you can list off 15 other things, right? A bunch of other legislation that you want to get passed and send over to the House. The only way we can do that is by eliminating the filibuster altogether, even if temporarily. And then you would have to Thune and probably President Trump and maybe, I don't know who else, somebody, get these guys in a room. You're not going to shift Rand Paul, okay? The only reason you won't shift Rand Paul is because his opposition is ideological, okay? He won't be swayed. But you can, I would say, with both Murkowski and Collins, you can incentivize them. Say, look, what bill have you wanted that you can take to the people, your people in Maine, your people in Alaska, and say, I ended the filibuster. I joined my colleagues to end the filibuster, to pass the Save America Act because we needed this in Maine, we needed this in Alaska, and the only way that I could do it was through this, and give them a win. And then as far as Tom Tillis, just go to him and say, I don't even want to say what they would have to say to him or offer him. Not that it's illegal. I'm not suggesting that, but they would have to basically give him a golden parachute after he leaves the Senate, because he is leaving the Senate. And as far as Mitch McConnell, I don't think they could sway him. And then you find out who else is opposed to it, and what do we need to do to get there? I don't know who the others are. There might be a few others. But take care of Collins, take care of Murkowski, take care of Tillis, and then anybody else on the Republican side, and you've got the votes. You could actually afford to not get Tillis or any of those three. You could lose even one from there, and it would still go through. You could still, well, no, I did this last time. I think you actually do, because it's a rule change and not. I'd have to look to see. I don't think Vance's vote would apply to a tie and a rule change. If it does, then you would need all three. If it doesn't, then you can go with two. Okay, so either way, you understand how this works, and you get it planned out. You know exactly what bills you're going to get rammed through as quickly as possible, and you get them going. Get them rammed through, get them over to the House, get them onto the president's desk, including the Save America Act, including reopening the government, and anything else that's absolutely necessary, and then you're done with it. And then, heck, vote to have the filibuster added back in, Because here's the thing, and I know a lot of people out there will say, well, that we can't end the filibuster because that's our only protection. And I would argue that the next available opportunity, and the way things are looking, this really could legitimately be 2027 when we have a new Democrat majority in the Senate. When that happens, Fetterman's the only one who might vote against ending the filibuster. The rest of them will vote to end the filibuster. And then they will never lose control of the Senate ever again. They will put into place policies that will prevent them, and when I say never again, generationally, it's not even for years or decades. It would be a generation before. And when you think, oh, that's not possible, just look back, folks. There have been times of extremely long control, especially by Democrats, of one or both houses, or one or both chambers. But back then we were able to survive because there was still a measure of bipartisanship. There was still common sense. There wasn't nearly as much corruption, polarization, and to be frank, there wasn't nearly as much pure evil on Capitol Hill as there is today. We do this, or we don't survive as a nation. And I keep having to say this over and over again because I don't want to get accused of being I don't care about the accusation. I don't want you to think, though, that I'm being hyperbolic or that I'm, trying to fearmonger. I mean, it depends upon your definition of fearmonger. Maybe I am, but it's only because I believe that it's true. I do believe that if we go into the midterm elections without the Save America Act, that we are toast. That they will take control of the House. There's a good chance they'll take control of the Senate. And there's an extremely good chance that if they do one or both of those, that they will then proceed to eliminate the filibuster and establish a legislative stronghold through the election systems that would establish permanent Democrat rule. That's what would go down. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, I really do. But that's what we're faced with, folks. I like the filibuster, but I don't see another option at this point. We have to eliminate it. John Thune has to do something. And we're not talking about in the next few weeks. We're talking about pretty much immediately, within the next 2 weeks max. And if he doesn't, then initiate whatever protocols are available to get him out of there. Remove him as Senate Majority Leader. I don't know who to replace him with. I mean, any of the ones that I would like have zero chance of getting the votes, which is probably why I like them. But get somebody in there that will at least have the desire. It's not just the guts. People say, oh, he's feckless, he's weak. Yes, those things are true. But he doesn't even have the desire to pass the Save America Act. Let's at least get somebody in there who wants it. But let's hope that it doesn't come to that. Let's hope that John Thune and Senate Republicans do the right thing and get the Save America Act passed, because Sound cliche, but it's the truth. If they do, they will help to save America. If you've been paying attention to gold and silver prices, there's a good chance that you are considering buying physical precious metals, right? Makes sense. And I'm not a financial advisor, but I personally would never buy numismatics or collectibles or anything like that. They're overpriced. The prices are inflated for no apparent reason. I am a bullion fan, which is why I work with Advisor Bullion. Ira over there does a fantastic job. Just the most straightforward and honest guy I know in the business. And he's been doing it for a very long time. That's why I strongly recommend going to patriot.tv/gold, patriot.tv/gold, and working with Ira, whether you're wanting to buy gold or silver through cash purchase to put in your safe, or if you want to do a retirement rollover or transfer. Best way to do it is to go to patriot.tv/gold, talk to Ira, and he will take fantastic care of you. More and more outlets started reporting today that Mojtaba Khomeini is actually in a coma. Some say he's dead, but the prevailing narrative is that he was injured, and he was severely injured. Some say that he may have lost a leg. Others say he's in a coma. We know that the strike that he was present, the strike that killed his wife, his dad, killed a whole bunch of people, and the notion that he is, out and about is sort of ridiculous, especially when we see that his unveiling at his coronation a few days ago, they used a cardboard cutout, which became, of course, the fodder for a bunch of memes. Babylon Bee did a few of them themselves. I hate to laugh because, again, this is a guy that is in a coma. But then on the other hand, he's also, from all accounts, an extraordinarily evil guy, somebody who may be even worse than his father and may have been the driving force behind some of the attacks against their own people, including the 2009 attack, as well as the crackdown in early 2026. This is the guy that is now supposedly the supreme leader of Iran. With that said, if it is true, and it seems to be true, that he is incapacitated in some form or fashion, either dead or in a coma or just severely injured or whatever, that is very, very, very concerning. Because in that type of scenario, that means that the IRGC is unofficially in charge. Okay? The supreme leader has the ultimate authority over pretty much everything, over the state, over the military, over the whole thing. He commands the armed forces. He sets all the foreign policy. He oversees the intelligence. He appoints major political leaders. And even those leaders are just puppets that he wields. This is a full-blown true dictatorship. So what is a dictatorship if there is no dictator? Well, there definitely is a dictator, obviously. Now, we know, and the reason that I've been convinced for a few days now that Khomeini is not available is because it was the IRGC who was amongst the board of scholars or whatever, the 88 people that got to pick the next supreme leader. They were the ones that were pressing for it to be Khomeini. Now, if he is in a coma, you might think, well, why would they do that? Why wouldn't they get, a full-blown living body? Because in this scenario, if they put their friend, because he was a friend to the IRGC, if they put him as the symbolic leader, then it would be the military tyrants, which is what they are within the IRGC, the most evil of the evil, the non-clerics. Not to say that the clerics are good guys by any means, but at the very least, they are not as militant as the military itself. So if the IRGC is indeed in charge, then that would explain a lot. And here's the thing: nobody's saying this. Well, maybe they're saying it on the left, but I know, even some of the more skeptical people on the right. I've been watching some show hosts, listening to some podcasts, and nobody's saying what I'm thinking, which is, I don't think I'm alone in this. Maybe I am, but I've actually been surprised at Iran's ability to retaliate. it seems as if, on day one, it's like, oh, okay, they got the supreme leader, took him out pretty fast. Looks like they're defending okay. Okay, so Iran's going, by day 2 and 3, they're doing the whole, scatter approach, just fire everywhere, wherever you can. And that seemed like a losing effort. And it seemed like we were bombing, taking out their munitions, taking out their bases, taking out their military, thinking, okay, this might actually be a pretty short endeavor. And then all of a sudden, the last couple of days we've seen tankers getting blown up. We've seen attacks that are accelerating, not dropping back, but the attacks, especially the drone attacks, are ramping up. And now there's a report that perhaps there might be some secret drone mothership off the coast of California where the FBI is actually alerting law enforcement to be on the lookout for drone attacks from Iran in California. This doesn't feel like they're almost dead. I know President Trump says that we've eliminated pretty much their entire Air Force, their entire Navy, got the Army or whoever, the IRGC or the People's Army, whichever one or both, got them pretty much locked down. But that's not how it feels. It doesn't, and I pray that I'm wrong, but it seems like, wow, they just keep getting more and more drones. Don't forget, folks, drones are cheap. And Iran, for all of their backwards components, their Navy being pretty darn weak, right? We've seen examples of that. Their Air Force being neutered, right? We've seen their air defenses that were effectively ineffective. They didn't do much to stop the U.S., to stop Israel from being able to attack at will. But the one thing that they've always had I say always, but for the last couple of years, their big, claim to fame has been their ability to create and to manufacture the best drones in the world. The best military, one-way attack drones, suicide drones. They've got that nailed. And I mean, it's to the point to where the U.S. is bringing in additional technology that they didn't have ready. They're asking for help. We're asking for help against Iran's drone technology. And they create them. They build them so fast. The manufacturing of a drone, it's not like building a a jet or a tank, a complex assembly line and tons of robotics. No, they can just take the shells and shove in some electronics, and they're off and running, busting them out. Iran busts out drones faster than the Amish can bust out barns. They're good at this, and that should concern us. Now, I don't know how much. Again, until a couple of days ago, I really thought, okay, we got it. We've got this under control. Today, it doesn't seem like that. And maybe tomorrow it will. Maybe I'm just being a little a little cautious, a little concerned. But I really wanted this to just be, wham, bam, and done, right? Just get in there, do the bombing, get rid of the supreme leader, and then the next supreme leader, and then the next supreme leader, and eventually they'll be so decimated that the people will be able to rise up. Now, I don't have eyes on the ground, and apparently very few people do outside of Mossad and the CIA. I don't have eyes on the ground in Iran, but I am curious as to why there has not been the massive uprising that President Trump had called for on day one. That we were told, not just through official channels, but even through unofficial channels, that, hey, you got the CIA and Mossad, they're getting the people stirred up. They got a plan. The people have already, even after 30 or 40,000 of them were killed in preparation for the revolution, you'd think, okay, well, now that they've got all this bombing happening, now that we've got the Ayatollah dead, right? We got everything going. Shouldn't they be, rising up? Shouldn't there be millions of people taking over? A la, what happened with Gaddafi and other leaders in the past? This seems like a playbook that should have already played out. at least in part. And here's the thing again, my disclaimer here is that, again, I do not have eyes on the ground, and we don't have a whole lot of intelligence from inside Iran. We're not hearing a whole bunch. Maybe it is happening, but that's not what I'm hearing. Okay. Even watching some of the friends, the shows that have connections in Iran, we're not hearing about people storming this base or that whatever. I don't even know what they storm. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe they don't know where to storm. Maybe the IRGC and the clerics and the ayatollahs and all the leaders are 80 stories down. I don't know. But I mean, even you would think that, just as an example, the unveiling of the cardboard Ayatollah, you would think that would have been a perfect opportunity for 1 million people to show up and denounce him. And again, I can't say for sure that didn't happen, but I think we would have heard. I fully support President Trump and his efforts. I fully support and pray for our armed forces currently in the Middle East. I want this to be over and done with. I wasn't a huge fan of it going in, okay, to be clear. I had and I, just in case you haven't heard my previous stances before the war, before the attack started, my statement was this, is that I don't want to get involved. I never want to get involved with anybody else's war ever. And I don't like regime change at all. But Iran is the one rare exception where if we did attack, I can understand because of the threat. And people say, well, have they really been a threat? This is a nation trying to get nuclear bombs whose leaders have called for the death of America. That's enough of a threat to me. Okay, you want evidence? You want, oh, well, that's blah, blah. No, this is a very powerful military that we're learning. I mean, this is true. They have been able to do quite a bit of damage. A very powerful military with strong weapons, not just their own, but also that come from Russia and China. This is a nation that has actively and aggressively promoted terrorism, including terrorism against the United States of America. And yes, I must repeat, because for some reason, people, not just on the left, but even some people on the right, don't seem to take heed to the notion that when you have a potentially near future nuclear power that wants to destroy the United States of America, that is a threat that you take seriously. And anyone, especially on the right, if you're on the left, granted you're just dumb, right? And so I can sort of give you, a little bit of leeway. Okay, they just don't understand how the world works or anything, right? But those on the right that are just completely like, oh no, Iran posed no threat ever. It's like, oh my gosh, you idiots. The problem is obviously it's Israel. If Israel wasn't involved in this at all, well, number one, if Israel wasn't involved, then they would still say, no, it's all Israel. Well, because they blame Israel for like literally everything. And I'm not totally, before anybody gets out there and say, holy cow, Rucker is all defending Netanyahu and the Israeli government, and he must be getting paid by AIPAC. No, I'm not. Folks, go all the way back and you'll see that that's not my thing. Okay. I was there on October 8th. Okay. Doing a show saying, what in the world did they do? Why did they allow this to happen? This is their 9/11 and it looks like an inside job. There's no way you can tell me that Hamas was able to do what they did to breach the most secure border in the world against the most technologically advanced military and intelligence industrial complex in the Middle East. And they were able to do it with like flying bicycles and mopeds. No, that didn't. So before anybody jumps on there and says he's in bed with Israel, no, they don't like me either. The Israeli government is not happy with me either. But with that said, I don't sit here and blame Israel for everything that goes on. And I would argue that if there was a way to prove and demonstrate that Israel that they had zero involvement with the Iran thing, I think that people on the right that hate Israel would be more accepting of the idea that Iran was always a threat. They've been a threat for a very long time. And it's not just a threat, they have attacked us multiple times. And it's a revisionist history, CNN-like revisionist history to say otherwise. So, but because Israel's involved, it's like whatever Israel does, a lot of these people on the right just have to be completely against it. It is a derangement syndrome similar to TDS, but it's IDS, and it is what it is. But whatever. Point is that I don't think this guy is alive. Or he might be alive, but if he is alive, he is almost certainly in a coma. Moshtabe Khamenei, and if he comes out and we get to see him, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Well, I guess I was wrong. And I'll admit that I was wrong. But as of now, I think that he was put in there as a puppet, as a spokesperson, not a spokesperson, a figurehead behind the scenes, so they can drop press releases and declare what he's saying, but that actually the IRGC is in charge, which means that they are far more dangerous than had they been able to select one of the somebody that President Trump would have liked, for example. Which, to be clear, I'm not in favor of the whole. If you're going to do a regime change, you don't just replace the head, and not in this scenario. You don't. I mean, if you're going to keep the Islamic Shiite radical government in place, then it doesn't matter who's in charge. Eventually, it's going to come back to bite us. You need a secular democracy. That's what the people want. That's what the people want. There's more justification for the people to overthrow the Iranian government and replace it with a secular democracy. There's more justification in Iran today than there was in Egypt or any of the Arab Spring nations, than there was in Ukraine, than there was in the various revolutions. Well, maybe not. Okay, so there was justification in some of the West African revolts, but otherwise, yeah, Iran, they want this. They're not sitting there just embracing Islam. Most of them are atheists. Some of them are Christians. They have to be very careful and quiet about that. And believe it or not, there are some Jews in Iran. I don't know what they think they're doing there, but whatever, you do you, right? So again, was against this before, but it happened. Against it with the caveats of I'd be okay with this particular type of regime change. And I would be okay with an extraordinarily limited military operation, similar to what we saw in Venezuela. Obviously, capturing Maduro is not the same thing as taking out an entire nuclear program and a military that is as immense and advanced as Iran's. Okay, I'm not trying to compare the two. I wasn't thinking we would get it done in one night, but I really was hoping for that 2 to 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks range. And that's still some say, oh, it could be September. Some of the administration are still looking at those original dates, and I hope that that's what plays out, because much longer than that. And we are going to start creeping more into the midterms. We are going to start getting the, Iran fatigue. It's already starting to happen on the right, and it already pre-existed on the left. We have to get President Trump, for not just for the sake of politics, but for the sake of American lives, needs to get this done as quickly as possible. Praise God, there haven't been many American lives that have been lost, but there have been some, and that's awful. That sucks. This is why I don't like intervention anywhere. But we're there, so I support the mission. I support the president. I support the military. And we got to watch out, because with the IRGC in charge, that makes them far more dangerous than they were even when Ali Khamenei was the supreme leader.
I've treated trauma in war zones, car accidents, backcountry rescues, you name it. And I often had to rely on inferior equipment. So when the folks at Jace Medical offered to help me build the medical kits I'd always dreamed of, I jumped at the chance. Let's start with the Jace Medic Kit. It's laid out for fast, intuitive access. It even includes a dedicated slot for the Jace case. your emergency supply of antibiotics. Next is the Jace Trauma Kit. This is for the most serious injuries, massive bleeding, chest wounds, burns, blunt trauma. We've also included a powerful lineup of over-the-counter and prescription medications. For everyday injuries, this is the Jace Aid Kit, your glove box, backpack, kitchen drawer essential. Compact, rugged, and packed with high-quality supplies. It's the first rugged kit combining prescription meds and premium first aid gear.
Visit patriot.tv/kit, that's patriot.tv/kit, to get the only med kit on the market designed for real-world emergencies.
I got a note the other day from a listener who said, you know what, you're going into some of the more advanced arenas of preparedness, and you didn't really tell us the basics. Like, what about those of us who are just getting started? And I look back and was like, hey, you know what? You're right. I didn't do the launch of preparedness. And whether or not you're already a seasoned prepper, or if you are just getting started, or you're somewhere in between, I would recommend listening to this, because even if you've already been there, done that, you might actually catch some ideas that could help you to advance your preparedness. So let's dive into it. We're titling this The First 30 Days of Prepping. And I say 30 days because it's an appropriate round number and it's what the average person can do. But I assure you that some of you out there might hear this and you might be able to squeeze all of this into like 2 or 3 days. Okay? I know I would. That's how I don't sit around like, okay, today we're going to spend 10 minutes doing this. No. I take a project and it's like, okay, let's go build a barn. I'm sort of Amish in that way. I'm not Amish, to be clear, but if, as far as like work ethic and going forward without looking back, that's kind of my mentality. But for some of you, this 30 days might be 60 days or 3 months or whatever. I would just recommend getting started. That is the most important point, because most Americans, the vast majority of Americans, including I'm sure many of you, are just a few days away from hardship. In other words, if things were to go south in a hurry, then you would be in trouble after just a few days. And that's hard to accept for some people, but it's the truth. It is reality that most people don't have enough food in their refrigerators or pantries to last more than a couple of weeks in most cases. And I've seen some households, okay, where 2 or 3 days and they're done. Okay, if DoorDash gets cut off and they can't go to the grocery store, then there's not much there. It's hoping to extend out the life of the jar of peanut butter that's been half full for 6 months. That's their survival plan. And I know that that's not all of you, or even probably most of you, but it is for a lot of people. That is the scenario, and we've got to get that fixed immediately. This is a lifestyle adjustment. It's not a big change, to be clear. I mean, it can be. I mean, you can go full-blown prepper, bunker, off-grid, survivalist, and we won't ever see you again. You're just gone. That's possible, and there's nothing wrong with that. I sometimes wish that I could do that, but for most of us, it's just a matter of, what, let's take it, let's do this incrementally. Think of it almost like working out, right? Let's say, I don't know if any of you have ever been maybe super unhealthy or fat or anything, and over time you decided, you know what, I'm going to get healthier. So you started eating better, you started exercising, you started getting better sleep, you started doing whatever it is, taking certain medications or whatever it is that you did to, over a period of time, to get healthier, right? That's not something that can be done overnight, and neither is full-blown preparedness. But when it comes to these first 30 days, or maybe 3 days for some and 3 months for others, we're calling this the 30-day plan. All of this is a step in the right direction, and that's the important part. But so when I say it's a lifestyle adjustment, you're not going to have to, if you don't want to, make massive changes. You just have to, for example, reorganize and rethink how you handle food. You have to set aside space and start accumulating water, things like that. But let's get into the actual 30-day plan. First and foremost, and this is the most important thing that I think most people, many people, maybe not most, many people miss, is that they don't come up with a good plan. And the plan is more than just, what to do in this situation, what to do in that situation. It really is about, knowing who to contact, having all of your information that you will need someplace safe. And safe is not on your computer. Let's be very clear about that. And it's definitely not online, because in many of the survival scenarios, we're not going to have access to electricity, not very easily. And even if we did, we may or may not have access to the internet. It may be down. One of the biggest scenarios that has been discussed by the planners, the same people that were planning for, what would happen if there's like a bat flew out of Wuhan that spread. I don't know. They're talking about that in 2019, right? So those same people are talking about what would happen if there was like a massive cyber attack that took down the internet for most of the United States and across the globe and kept it down for 2 weeks all the way through to 2 months and maybe even indefinitely. They're talking about stuff like that. Okay, the World Economic Forum has that on their agenda. And when I say their agenda, I don't think they're just talking about it theoretically, but we'll see. I don't want to get into too many globalist conspiracy theories. I'm just saying. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. Point is that write it down. Get you a notebook, or like me, I've got dozens of notebooks. Literally dozens. Maybe hundreds. I don't know. I got them stacked up in different places. Many of them, the most important ones, I have them in fire-resistant places, fireproof containers, because that's what we do. I use little notebooks. They're not the little small ones like the pocket notebooks, but these are old reporters' notebooks. I used to be a reporter, and so I have the ones. I'm holding one right now as we speak. They're, I don't even know what they're called. This one's called News. It's literally called a reporter's notebook. How funny is that? I never knew. I don't actually look at the cover. I just go use it. It fits nicely in your hand. It can fit into a pocket, not very easily, but because it is pretty big. It's about, what is that? About 8 inches long, 8 inches tall, and about 4 inches wide, 3 or 4 inches wide. So I put a lot of notes in these, and some of them, depending upon the information that I'm keeping, a lot of it is just good old fashioned phone numbers and addresses. That's something that I am so scared for. I asked my kids, do you guys know my phone number? And none of them did. It's like, you're just dad on my phone. Why would I need to know your phone number? It's like, I guess that's true. Like, kids, you should know this stuff. And then they hit me up with, okay, well, what's my phone number? And I didn't know it, but I did have it written down. That's the difference. Get it written down. Phone numbers, addresses, directions, all that good stuff. Maps, paper maps, super important. And then, of course, books, including your Bible. You don't want to go into an apocalyptic situation without your Bible, unless you're not a Bible-believing Christian, in which case you won't care, but I would still recommend having a Bible either way, regardless of your belief system, because in that scenario, you will want to read your Bible, whether you like to read it today or not. But having books, we have remedies, for example, homeopathic remedies out in the wild. How to identify the particular types of plants and stuff like that, right? So that is, and I'm not saying that you have to have all this accumulated in the first 30 days. I'm saying that has to be part of your plan. Your plan needs to be to accumulate, get everything moved to analog, as we call it. Get everything that you would need in the future, move to analog in case there is a digital or grid-based apocalypse. Or let's say, you're out and about, the phone doesn't work, and you're traveling. It'll be nice to have it on paper format, right? This is one of the reasons why I'm not against Bitcoin at all, or any of the cryptocurrencies, but I definitely wouldn't put the lion's share of your money, your wealth into it at this point from a survivalist perspective. If let's say, you're wealthy, right? And you want to put a lot into it, and you're still going to have plenty of silver and gold and fiat currency and barter material separate from the Bitcoin, great. But don't be like, oh my gosh, you know, I got $8 to my name outside of what I have in Bitcoin. Don't be that guy. Because again, in that scenario where the digital world is inaccessible for extended periods of time, having your money in Bitcoin means that you don't have any money at all until things recover. So but that was a long. I digressed way too far. Let's get back into the plan. The plan has to be shared and it has to be practiced, and it doesn't have to be perfect. I want to be clear about that. Here in the first 30 days, getting a good plan together is awesome. Getting it out there, getting it distributed, talking to your family and perhaps your friends, anybody who's going to be involved in your survival plan needs to know what that plan is. Okay? And ask them, beg them, demand of them, utilize your skills in persuasion or your authority, either one or both, to make sure that they do take this seriously. Okay? Just like, I remember when I was a kid, they always had okay, let's run a fire drill so that we know exactly what to do in case of emergency. And yeah, we did. This doesn't even have to be that complex or even that physical. When I say, practice it, run through it, it's about having a plan. For example, let's say that your home is the rally point for all of your friends and family to go to if they don't, if they, let's say they live in an apartment and it might not be safe for them to stay there in an apocalypse, and they can safely get to your home. That might be a rally point, or if they're out and about, right? Let's say things go south. We're just, as I'm recording this, there was just reports that Iran might have drone ships or whatever off the coast of California, of all places, and that they're telling the FBI is telling California law enforcement to keep your eye out for drone attacks from Iran out here in California. How crazy is that, right? But what if that were to happen? What if they hit L.A., Orange County, San Diego, or even up into the Bay Area, any of the major metros by the sea? That would be crazy. And the reactions to that, depending on how the scope and scale of such an attack, the reactions to that would be equally crazy. Traffic in LA is the worst anywhere outside of DC that I've ever been. Okay, and so it's bad enough in the best of situations. It would be downright destructive, and people would be panicking, and it would be dangerous in an attack scenario. Same thing with Orange County's not as bad, but it would get bad. San Diego is a little bit worse than Orange County, not as bad as LA. Again, all three of those areas very challenging to drive around. So being able to have means of communication, plans in place, people knowing where to go, when to go, how to get there, all these things, knowing how to get there without GPS, knowing how to, all these things. And I will, but to be clear, I will go into far greater detail. Okay, we'll do an entire show, and I'll put together an article about, putting together a plan. But here's the best thing that you could do right now is to, and I hate to recommend this, I really do, because I'm so scared that it's going to spit out the wrong information, but I gave it a shot. I utilized artificial intelligence. I told it, here's where I am. Here's I'm concerned about this scenario, this scenario, this scenario, this scenario. Here's what I have available to me. Here's the people and where they are. Now, I didn't get full address, but I've got a brother over here and a sister over there, and we want to have the rally point is here, and can you put together a comprehensive plan for what to do in most of these situations, and what if we have to leave? What is an escape route? What is the safest possible escape route by car? What is a viable escape route by foot? Where should we be heading? Literally, I spent probably 30, 45 minutes just laying out criteria before I got the first input. And then I specifically asked, what other information do you need before telling me, putting together this plan, and then put together the plan. Okay. I went through all that process, and admittedly, it was really good. Okay. I already had a plan in place that I'd already shared with everybody. And this has been a plan that we developed years ago, and we have enhanced it over time The new AI version of the plan, admittedly, was superior to mine. So I'm going to put out, I will, a future episode, we will just go do the whole show about the plan, and I will put together, number one, a base plan, a checklist, more, not so much a plan, but a planning checklist. And then I will put together a prompt that will help you to go through. You could take the prompt, copy and paste it, and utilize that to have artificial intelligence generate a survival plan for you if you choose to. Now, I'm old fashioned, okay? I was very impressed with the AI plan. I'm sticking with my plan. I made some adjustments to my plan based upon things that I learned from the AI plan, but I'm not going to allow AI to tell me where to go or what to do, even if it might be right. Okay? Again, old fashioned. So yeah, we'll do that. But let's get into it. So step one of your 30-day plan: assume that you are going to make a plan. That's part of your first 30 days of prepping. Now we get into the nuts and bolts. Most important item, by far, hands down, not even close. Everything else is secondary to water. You got to have enough water. And this is where a lot of preppers will almost certainly disagree with the advice that I'm going to give, but I'm going to give it anyway. And this is advice based upon the understanding. This is advice for those who have enough space to where space isn't a huge issue. I'm not saying that you have to have like a sprawling mansion or homestead, but to where you're not as concerned about space in that scenario, and where money is not a huge issue. Again, you don't have to be rich, but in the scenario where you do have enough money to be able to spend a decent chunk on it. I am unfortunately a fond of bottled water, and I'm talking about the good stuff, the one in the good bottles, not the crap in the forever plastic, microplastic, forever chemicals, yada yada yada. I actually don't have the brand here in front of me. I should have gotten that. I'll put that in future notes. We'll go deeper into all these things, by the way. But I am a fan of bottled water. You don't have to be. Okay, for a lot of you, just having a very solid sealable, set of either 5 gallon or 45 gallon or whatever, various sizes. But again, don't forget, you need a gallon of water per day per person. So that means that if let's say you've got a family of 4, okay, that's 4 gallons a day. So let's say that you need it for 2 weeks. What is that? That's 56 gallons of water that you got to store just to be able to survive 2 weeks without replenishing your water supply. That's a lot of water for a short period of time, right? But it's necessary. And I know there are, if you have plenty of money, I don't know how much they cost because I don't have plenty of money, but I know that there are those, 3,000 gallon things that sit in your backyard. If you can get that, awesome. There's also vertical, 500 and 800 gallon ones that you can get that are a little bit less expensive that sit inside. They look like water heaters, right? Those are good. Those are great, right? But making sure that you have at least some, for a family of 4, again, having 50 gallons, that could be just, the 5 gallon or even the 3 gallon containers, having them stocked up, stored away appropriately in a cool, preferably dark, preferably dry place, off the ground, on a pallet or on a shelf, away from environments as much as possible, and preferably covered if you can, even though they're sealed. Get the covers that you can put over the containers themselves. That would be an excellent move. Like I said, and I have those. I don't want to make it sound like all I've got are bottled waters, but there are advantages to bottled water. Number one, you can use them, like we do. We use them. I always keep a supply, and I keep that supply replenished, right? But I don't know with the numbers. I need to check sometime. We've got probably, I would say, somewhere in the 400 or 500 bottled water range. And I rotate them. They have to put an expiration date on them. It's bottled water. It's not going to expire. Okay, as long as you keep it sealed, it's not going to expire. And if it's been sitting there for 2, 3, 5, 10 years, yeah, you might want to give it a sniff and a little taste before gulping it down. Right, that's important. Just in case it got breached in some form or fashion. But otherwise, if you're getting the good stuff, then and when I say good stuff, I'm not talking about like oh get the Scandinavian spring water. No, it really comes down to the quality of the water itself and the bottles. That's the important part. Getting the peat bottles must 100% absolute must to get the peat bottle. Is that more expensive? You betcha. Is it worth it? 100% totally worth it. And then last but not least on the water side of things, make absolutely sure that you've got, at the very least, unscented bleach. Okay, just a little drop of water will make sure in your water will make sure that it's clean. Preferably, you have what I like to recommend, which is a gravity filter. Okay, you can clean filter 5, 10, 20,000 gallons of water in one of these things just with a single filter. Well, with a set of filters. I use 4 filters in my gravity filter, but it works and it's amazing. And I recommend it for daily drinking water because it actually does taste better, right? We're talking about the good filters, right? Not the. This isn't like a Brita thing. Brita is not going to protect you. It's not going to get rid of nothing wrong with Brita for flavor. But that's really all it comes down to is that it's flavor. You want to get the higher quality gravity filters. And again, we'll go into greater detail about water in the future. I'm dwelling too much on that and running out of time. Now, once you get that out of the way, you got your water squared away, and you're in good shape there. You should be fine, right? Oh wait, no, you got to eat. I forgot. We still have we can't just drink water. We can for like 30, 40 days, most of us, but it's not pleasant and it's not healthy. So you are going to want to get food. And you don't have to go out in that first month and get a year's worth of food, but it would behoove you to have at least a month's worth of food. And to be clear, I said this before and I'll say it again, that does not mean going out and getting a bucket, right? It doesn't mean going out and getting a bucket of freeze-dried food. Not if you don't have your pantries filled up first. Fill the pantries first, folks. Once the pantries are filled, you shouldn't even touch buying a bucket of freeze-dried food. You shouldn't even consider it until you have at least 3 to 6 months worth, preferably longer than that, of regular food. We're talking about canned food. We're talking about pasta and rice in sealed containers, shelf-stable soups, anything, for the most part, anything canned meats, canned vegetables. There are different variations of it. I previously mentioned peanut butter, but the freeze-dried aspect of it, that's something that can wait. And keep in mind, our longtime sponsor at Heaven's Harvest, which you can always get to them by going to jdrucker.com/food, jdrucker.com/food. But they focus on the buckets, and not just buckets. They have plenty of other stuff. They've got these MREs now. It's pretty amazing. They've got tons of stuff. And as much as I love their food and I love recommending them, okay, I don't recommend calling them until you do have, like I said, a nice supply of just regular food, and make sure that you get it on a rotation. These are little things. You can get them on Amazon when it comes to like canned foods, right? You can get them on Amazon where they roll the cans down towards you. They're can holders, and not just Amazon. You can get them in most places. I recommend getting a lot of those, and just keep your rotation going as you start, using your vegetable soups, and you've used 3 or 4 of them. Go ahead and replenish them. Okay, make sure that you've got 5, 10 of those, and 5 or 10 of the chicken noodle or whatever. Get food that you will actually eat, and then eat it. You don't want to just take these because they don't have a super long shelf life, but they do last for a couple of years, sometimes up to 5 years. Same thing with tomato sauces. Same thing with canned vegetables, canned meat. None of this stuff is healthy, to be clear. I know On one hand, it's like, yeah, you got to get the survival stuff. On the other hand, there's the notion of you don't want to eat a whole lot of ultra processed food, and most of this stuff is ultra processed, highly chemically preserved foods. If you are very ambitious and very, you really want to do this right, can your own food. That's amazing. And if you want to get a freeze dryer and freeze dry your own foods, equally amazing. I'm a big fan of, we take our food, we make our whatever it is for the night, we make our lasagna, okay, and the leftover lasagna gets put in the refrigerator until we've got enough food together that we throw it all into the freeze dryer and do a round of freeze drying. It's going to be leftovers and it's going to be fine. Okay? That's again, we'll go into greater detail about that a little bit later. Once you got your food, you need light, you need power, you need candles, batteries, flashlights, solar chargers. I'm not talking about necessarily solar panels, though those would be nice too. But at least the solar chargers to be able to keep a radio going, right? And there's those crank radios that you can get. They have some that have the solar charger. They also have the thing where you crank the side and it generates power. You have to crank it for a while, but it'll get there. And you can also use those to charge your devices, charge your flashlights, charge your batteries. I'm a big fan of rechargeable batteries, by the way, for that reason. Assume that how are you going to handle things? If the grid goes down, if there is no power in your area for an extended period of time, will you be able to see? Will you be able to travel if necessary? These are things to take into consideration. So make sure that you've got plenty of light, plenty of basic power, and if you can afford and you want to go ahead and start storing energy, right? Or at least being ready to store energy. You can get the, what are they called? I haven't used them in so long. The not the generators, the batteries where, you hook them up to my gosh, I'm going to sound like an idiot. I'm tired, by the way. Portable power stations, right. You get the small solar chargers. You can get the ones, we've got one that, we've got two solar panels. They're about, I'd say, 3 or 4 feet long. Okay, we put them out there, and you set them out there all day, and they can charge one of the power stations. We got 2 power stations to go along with them, which means I've got to get to make it actually work. We realistically should get 2 more sets of solar panels, just to make sure that it can be perpetuated for an extended period of time. Not indefinitely. Everything breaks down over time. So that's the other reason why you'd want to have at least 2, if you can afford it, 2 power stations, 4 to 6 solar panels, the little mini portable solar panels, foldable, and then just put them on rotation. Keep them out there, get them as much sun as possible, have them charge up while you're keeping your refrigerator or whatever it is alive with the other power station. Communication. Now, this is one, again, I will have to go into much deeper conversations because the communication is a 2-way thing, right? But you have to at least get one way. You got to be able to have access to a radio. I know it's been so long since I've actually listened to a radio outside of I don't even know if I've listened to one in my car in years. Jeez, it's a different world. But assume that there is no internet. Assume that mobile devices aren't going to be able to do anything. Assume that you got to go with good old-fashioned terrestrial, analog radio. Well, you got to have that. You can get the hand crank one that I had mentioned before, or just charge it through the solar. Any way possible, but having that information, being able to gather that information and hear what's going on, know what's going on in the outside world, would be extraordinarily important, especially if drones come in. This still blows my mind about the drones. I mean, geez, right? Am I right? So be ready for that. But then in a separate scenario, you also want to have 2-way communication, especially if you are going to be splitting up. Let's say you got to make a water run. You got to go down to the river. River's 5 miles away, and the spouse is going to stay at home with the the kids, and you're going to go by yourself and go, you're going to want to have communication. Okay, so that's where we get into walkie-talkies, various brands, and again, like I keep saying, I'm going to expand on that with a later episode. Meds, you got to have your meds. Okay, I am a big fan of taking as few pharmaceuticals as possible. I don't like to take Motrin or Tylenol or anything, even if I've got a headache. I prefer to take no drugs at all, but some of us have to. I have members of my family that have chronic challenges that require daily medications. Like their lives would change if they didn't get these meds. So I understand that. Now, the challenge there is you got to have prescriptions and you can't really stock up on it, or can you? And this is where I'm going to have to go into a compliance stage until I can work out the legalities. But it is technically possible to be able to stock up on those long-term storage stuff. One way to do it, by the way, just throw this out there, is you can always talk to my good buddies over at Jace by going to patriot.tv/meds, patriot.tv/meds. They will take care of you. You get a discount if you use what's the promo code? I think it's Rucker10. The number's 10. That'll get you a nice discount, and they'll take good care of you there. But otherwise, there are strategies, we'll say, to be able to accumulate and stockpile the appropriate meds, as well as to find alternatives to those meds, depending upon what they are, for a future show. So those are the basics. Notice I didn't talk about money. I didn't talk about bartering. I didn't talk about anything like that, because again, we're just talking about the first 30 days, incremental. Just make sure you got the very basics, the things that you would need to survive. You're going to spend the next 30 days, or again, 3 days or 3 months, however long it takes for you, but you're going to spend the next X period of time getting ready to be able to stay alive with you and your family in a apocalyptic situation for a certain period of time. And that certain period of time might be days, could be weeks, could be months. Again, you can accelerate or take it slow as much as you want. You don't have to. There's no set plan. It really is based around your lifestyle, your resources, your geography, your skill set. And that's one of the reasons why it is so important to subscribe to The Late Prepper. I'm subscribed to the podcast. I don't have. Oh, we do have, by the way, a Substack where I'll be putting a lot of information. You can go to lateprepper.substack.com and receive those emails. That would be great. But yeah, we need to put out the resources as much as possible so that people can make the decisions, so that you'll know where to go for information. Because here's the thing, and this is not me being bitter. This is really the genesis of this entire concept. When I first started talking about and launching the Late Prepper Show years ago, the genesis of it was that I was getting bad advice. on YouTube. I started getting sick of it. It's like, I mean, even people that I learned to like and trust, they're giving good advice. Every now and then they would just give horrible advice. And unfortunately, pertained to brand deals and positioning themselves to, and nothing wrong with that. I'm not complaining. Okay. It's not like, oh, wow, these guys are selling out. No, I don't care. It's a business. They're using their talents. I'm not ripping on them for that. And sometimes it was just out of ignorance, like I said, so I decided, let's put out some common sense stuff. And then it turned into what we're doing now. And what we're doing now, I'm sure will evolve into something bigger and better in the near future. So stay tuned. Subscribe to this podcast. Go to lateprepper.substack.com, and you can subscribe there as well to the newsletter. And we will keep you informed on what to do in case Iran sends drones to your hometown.